Okay, so those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Hullen. I'm from Aspire. The gentleman on my right-hand side is the equally hirsute Michał Bielawski, managing partner of Adaptive Solutions, who are our partner and main organizer really for pulling together today's event. So shortly I'm going to hand over to Michał to run through the agenda for the next 75 minutes. First, however, maybe let me say a couple of words from an Aspire perspective on why GPO is important. So, what is GPO effectively? It's a way to bring added efficiencies to the delivery of the process, but more so a vehicle to better understand and standardize processes across the business and bring an extra level of integration between the business and our centres. And moreover, it's the direction that we're heading in. So the theory is great, but what's the best practice and where are the challenges? And that's really what the core of today's call is about. We have this great advantage in sharing experiences because people working in centres, we have common experiences, not least in terms of that interface between the global and the local. So at this point, let me hand over to Michał. Over to you, Michał.
Yes, still good morning. Michał Bielawski speaking. What is GPO for me? I like very much the name of the position and the abbreviation meaning. So GPO, Global Process Owners. So in fact, this represents very deeply, very true what should be about and what could bring the value of the position, meaning the role, the empowerment should be global. So of course, end-to-end process. It should be about the process. So this is very important to understand what is the process. That the process have its own conditions, should be measurable, should be described. And in fact, third part of the name, which is owner. So this is also very important. That in fact the person on the position, or in fact could be the person, of course, we will discuss, could be also the department even, should be the powerful and empowerment to make the changes, to really own the process globally. So that's why I think we will have today very interesting discussion about if it's global, what is the process and how this ownership can be managed. So let's move on. About Adaptive, very few words. We are the boutique consulting company, over 6 years on the market, helping in the very different way the GBS and the shared service center organizations to develop, to sustain, to optimize. We can work as the strategic consultant. Our people can work also as the project managers or transition managers in your project, and of course we also have a few people who can even operationally support your delivery. Currently, with the more than 50 people working in the more than 100 projects for the shared service and the GBS organizations. But okay, so let's say we are the network organization, so that's why also networking here with the Aspire and working here with the excellent speakers for today's event. Few words, a few rules. So of course, okay, we are on the camera on, but the rest of the participants, please be on mute and put camera off. Of course, feel free to ask the questions, put them on the chat box. We have a moderator who will bring on the table the questions. Just to notice that the webinar is recorded, which you should notice, but also this means that will be available later on the YouTube, on the different channels, on the Adaptive or Aspire. And just to put the webinar flow, the Q&A session will be placed end of the webinar. Let's start and enjoy the webinar.
Okay, so I think it's over to me, isn't it, to do the first introduction. Let me start by introducing Peter Mitchell. Very nice branding there, Peter. In fact, I'm feeling a little bit left out, I can see. Everybody else has got their branding up. My goodness. All right. Anyway, I'm not sure that Peter needs much of an introduction. He is the head of Global Business Services at ABB in Cracow. I think it was set up in 2017, correct me if I'm wrong, and has circa 1,800 people in the Cracow hub. But Peter has responsibility for more than the Cracow hub. He's also an Aspire board member. And he's also led the team that's been organising our centre heads calls for the Aspire community this past 12 months. So, you know, Peter deserves a recognition, really, I think, for really being a leader in the community. And ABB were awarded Best Employer Branding Initiative at the CE Business Services Awards only last week. So, Peter, that's a kind of formal introduction. And we'll move on now to you, Michał. Yeah.
Okay, the next one, Arkadiusz Gostkowski, and currently the global process owner for the Coloplast, with the very deep knowledge of the master data, currently on product master data, but let's say every element of the master data have no secret for him. And what I also can tell about him, he also knows at least the Polish and the European market, even from his experience, because he also was even traveling around Poland for his career in the different service centers, working in the Piła, but then in Tri-City when he's coming from, but also working in Łódź, in Cracow, and currently in Szczecin. So I think also Arek can give this local and global view of the processes and the ownership.
Thanks, Michał. Okay, so now Evert Jan Muller. Though Evert Jan, I've been speaking to somebody today, so I know that you're commonly known as EJ. I think that's right.
That's correct. It's much easier, right?
It is easier. It is easier. So EJ, right? So EJ is Director of Global Finance Business Process Management at Heineken. So Heineken was also just awarded at the CE Business Services Awards last week, Cracow Business Centre of the Year, essentially for moving the dial in all the right directions on GBS metrics. So a well-deserved award. Heineken in Cracow, established in 2012, has circa 900 people in its Cracow centre and has created something in the region of 400 new roles in the last 18 to 24 months. So that's Evert Jan and Heineken, sorry, EJ and Heineken. Back to you, Michał.
And then the last one, but the least one, Robert Godziszewski, who will lead all of the webinars and the questions and the flow. Robert is program manager in Adaptive Solution Advisory Group. When you talk about the GPO, he is really process owner or the expert in all of the processes which you can imagine definitely in the F&A area. So we can bring the value. But we are adaptive. Robert is adaptive. Also, one remark to the CE awards. So okay, we don't receive any awards, but our CEO Christian Bester was the part of the jury. So also I think we can bring a brick to the awards of the ABB and the Heineken. And so Robert, currently the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michał. Thank you very much, Andrew. So we wanted to start this session and we aimed to have this session not only as a discussion on our side, but the main aim from our perspective is also to have the whole audience invited for the discussions. So as a heads up, I would like to mention that we will be working with respective polling using Slido. So please have your mobile phones ready or websites to start using it. And even going already right now to the topic, we would like to discuss the topic why in general organizations establish the role of GPO on their side. But before you will go into that direction, we already have a first polling to take care of, which I will right now run. Andrew? Okay, if all the attendees could go on mute, I would be really grateful, and let's only the participants.
Right, okay. So you can hear me, right? So guys, I want everybody to participate, everybody that's on the call. So you need to go to slido.com in your browser, on your phone. You can also use the QR code to go to that page. The code to enter is there, right? It's 077828. And then the question will come up. Do you have a GPO role in your organization? It's yes, no, or tomato.
Pomidor.
Pomidor. So if you're Polish, you know what that means, apparently. So, okay, I think we've got, how many people do we have on the call? Can somebody tell me?
60 something.
60 something. Okay, so 25 votes is not enough. Keep going, guys. We're not going to move on till we get some more.
Yeah, let's aim at least 70%.
So the question is, I think the question is, are we technically challenged? I'm not sure we're going to get any more. I'm not sure we're going to get any more, but as you can see, I think you're on the right call, actually. So 22 out of 28. That wasn't me that put tomato. Okay, so back to you then, Robert. Off you go.
Thanks, Andrew. So in general, we have right now the understanding how many participants are having the GPO in their organization, but still we can see that at least for now, 6 of us or 7 do not have the GPO in the organization. So the question to you, Peter, Evertian, and Arek, in your opinion, why organizations establish the role of GPO and why it would be good to have one, at least to provide some input for those who do not have it yet? Peter?
I mean, for me, it's a yes all the way. Obviously, of course, it depends on the size and complexity of your organization and what industry you're in. But let's take it that the representation here is that we're in the business of medium to large size companies where you have finance and a CFO and you're producing something. I think the role itself is very rewarding. I'm a full kind of believer in this. I myself was a GPO for 6 years in ABB. So there was life before I arrived in Cracow, and it was my GPO role. I mean, the reason to have it is simply put, you need to have some level of governance and adherence to the rules and regulations. So you have an internal control component. I think it comes hand in hand with process ownership. It also drives policy. Any policy that comes, particularly in our core processes such as record to report, that's where it has to come from a complete owner of the process and move that down to the units. Non-negotiables. So there's only one way of doing something. Then there's the need to standardize. If you're in a complicated, let's say, application landscape or ERP, multiple ERPs, you need to push a certain standard throughout the company. And that's a hell of a lot of work. You got different opinions, but for me, it was extremely important when I was the process owner to be able to implement not just the solutions, but also a standard approach. And we're not there yet, The current process owner could write a book on that as well, but it's the standardization. And of course, then afterwards comes if you're really kind of close to improving and pushing that forward, you can automate. So it's a time traveler, really. You need to understand where we're coming from as a process owner, where we are now globally, and take a kind of a little bit of a step away from operations, but always have a finger on the pulse, and also then bring something to the table that shows the direction and be able to communicate that. But I think we'll go through the skills and the experiences a little bit later in this session. But that's my take on it's absolutely necessary. It's, in my case, it's unavoidable, and it definitely reaps a lot of benefits if you do it right.
Yeah, let's explore those areas of the experiences and skill sets later on. So to you, EJ, why do you think organization?
Yeah, I fully agree with Peter, and I think it's also an evolution, because in most companies it starts as a functional owner. It sits in a function, and then you gradually move for a process owner within the function, and that's the stage that we are in. And then there are very few that really make that step towards real end-to-end process owners, where you have one person responsible for the full source-to-pay process. There are very few who are there, but that's ultimately the direction that you have to go to. For us in Heineken, it was very important because we were in a pretty bad situation at some point with finance, transactional finance, grown very rapidly in shared services. And we had to take a step back and reconsider our target operating model. And that for us was the moment to say, okay, if you define such a target operating model and you will have delivery vehicles to get that implemented, and that can be an ERP implementation or it can be something else, you need to have guardians and owners of the target operating model and making sure that you get it properly landed in the organization. And that is that authority, that's that policy part, and but it's broader. It's process, it's data, it's technology, it's people, it's organization, it's service delivery, and all of that needs to be guarded and implemented. And the second one, I think, and that comes to that end-to-end part. For us as finance, we really took the initiative to connect with the neighboring functions, be it procurement, supply chain, commerce. To land the realization that what you do upstream has a consequence downstream, so that you need to fix your processes end to end, and that as commerce you cannot live in your silo, but you need to look at it from an end-to-end perspective. And I think that is one of the crucial roles why you need the GPO. And then we'll come later on. Okay, what does that mean for skill sets, organizational relations, etc.
Yeah, so we can hear that a really wide aspect and really a lot of things to take care of. Arek, and what would be your opinion?
Well, Peter and IJ, you were covering very much the benefits, and I would put some light on the disadvantages of not having, especially when we are working in a global companies. We have a lot of people working with finance processes or master data or purchasing. And all of those people are having their ideas how the company should work with general ledger or accounts payable whatsoever. And I think we have to have one person that is setting the direction, because just company cannot run with one topic in 5 different directions at the same time. It's especially visible within my favorite master data. We have to have one standard how we are creating our customers, how we are naming our customers, and the same rule follows to posting invoices, closing the month and so on and so on. So what is the risk of not having global process owners is that we are not running efficiently in the right direction, or somehow we may run in different directions, opposite directions. So at the end of the day, we are not moving forward as a company. That's the risk I'm seeing, and I'm considering as a quite big risk, actually.
Arek, when we have a processes like AP, O2C, or R2R, and the role of the GPO, we're talking about for the few years. How about your expertise area, master data? I can assume that sometimes if there was a place that sometimes people don't know what is master data about, and how about to put a GPO for the master data. Did you have any difficulties to really convince? Yeah, we should have it, and that's the problem.
Yes. You are right, Michał. That was very very difficult in most cases in my career to convince top management that master data, so managing the data of customers, employees, products, and so on, needs to be also centrally managed. But I think that the recent couple of years, when we are running so much into globalization, digitalization, and a lot of businesses are moving into internet and operating more in the internet, the data, the quality of the data gets more and more important. And if you don't have the right data, if you cannot show the right information about your products to your potential buyers or customers, you do not exist in that environment. So I think a bit reality was supporting my message that master data also needs to be strongly governed with the role of global process owner or global domain owner, as in my case. So the awareness is rising definitely, but wasn't easy at the beginning, definitely.
Thanks, guys. In general, I understand that you were talking also quite widely about the direction and where the organization wants to go, and to have a clear vision and strategy where the organization should go and how it should evolve. Here we can see from the polling that 8 response still indicates there is no GPO role in the organization. It doesn't mean that the strategy and point of view is not there, but still we can say that GPO role would have this improved significantly. And here, talking about, let's say, the strategy and the vision and the reasoning for the GPO role, we could say that the goal for the organization is not to be perfect by the end, following Simon Sinek. The goal is to be better tomorrow. So the main reasoning of the GPO role from my perspective, and let's say why organizations should establish such a role on their side, is only and with a clear goal and direction of the transformation. So to be better tomorrow is to transform either from the process perspective, to work on your processes, or from the centralization perspective, when you establish the whole GBS structure, the whole GBS organization, and how your GBS organization would evolve. Thanks to this, and thanks to having a GPO role, then you could, within your organization, work on this and significantly have this improved. So we could as well say, who is the GPO today? And quickly touching on this, from my perspective at least, GPO is a person who is, say, a bridge linking different silos in the organization. And thanks to bridging those silos, you can have your organization working efficiently from the process perspective, with a proper communication, proper hands-offs, and proper management. So knowing that there is an important having, let's say, the GPO in the organization, and knowing, let's say, who this person should be, at least from the high level or visionary perspective, I think that we can go towards a thinking and discussion how we should position the GPO in the organization structure. So where this role should be put so that this person is effective. Before we will discuss this with our speaker, again, I would like to invite everyone for a second polling.
Okay, guys, so same code as before, 077828. Where is the role of GPO placed in the organization structure of your company? One vote, obviously, one vote on this. Since we have 30 that said yes, that they do have GPO in the organization, we should get 30 replies this time.
Maybe we will get right now even more. Yeah, let's see. Some people were joining our session.
That
still
is,
in the meantime.
Yeah. So quite interesting to see that currently it's in head office. Majority have it in head office. That's over 50%. Some within the GBS. No man's land. No man's land. I think Peter's going to explain where no man's land is, if I remember rightly. Where you are, Peter?
Well, it's not where I am. but it's in brackets there. I mean, other, right? It's not, you know, none of the above, right? It's kind of that nice question you have in multiple choice if you're not sure.
Tomato, pomidor. Yeah, okay. Oh, look, it's fine. Right, there we go. People are getting the hang of the tool. Right, we're up to 35. Maybe back to you then, Robert.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So we have the results. We can see that quite many of the GPO roles are positions in headquarters, still reporting to CXO, but some others are in the GBS, either reporting to GBS. It's quite popular to create the GPO role in the centralized function, in the centralized organization. So maybe EJ, how do you think? What, from your perspective, is it, let's say, approach which will drive the success, or you would propose something different than putting the GPO role in GBS and reporting to the head of GPS?
Yeah, so I think it depends very much on your organizational structure, your organizational DNA, and your ambition. Heineken has always been a very decentralized company, valuing the entrepreneurship in the opcos. So in our line of business, the informal lines are just as important as the formal lines, and our network is critical. So if you're in a very Anglo-Saxon American company, you're talking about a completely different setup. And we have quite a simple business model. We have more or less one business line, beer. We have 4 regions and a bunch of functions. So basically working in a matrix. Well, we used to have GBS, then we abolished it against the industry in 2015. And we have then shared services mostly in finance and in Europe, and then some bigger shared services in Mexico and Brazil, which are 300-400 heads each, just for the country itself. So if you want to be effective in such a setup, you need to set it up at the global level, and you need to get the people with the right skill set. And that's a topic that we'll discuss later. But for us, the link towards the CFO, again, being finance is critical. And from there on, we can move further. But we need to have that link because of that more informal nature of the company, and that entrepreneurship that we expect from operating companies. And that is always the tension between the two. One thing to say there is, wherever you're positioned, and certainly in our line of business, the authority doesn't come only from where you're positioned. It also comes from the quality of the work, the quality of the people. That is what will deserve you a seat at the table, not your reporting line.
Yeah, the quality of the work which is being done and the people which are brought by the GPO, these are indeed crucial things, and part of the skill set or the factors which are in the organization and which are supporting the GPO to be effective in the role. This will still we plan to discuss on the next slides. However, maybe to you, Arek, looking at the results, I believe that mainly you were the one who was reporting in the GPS as master data owner and reporting to head of GPS. How would you see what would be the advantages of such solution? And if there are any disadvantages, then what are they?
Well, maybe first I will continue a bit or comment to what AJ said. That location of process owner is related of the structure of the company, but I think it might be also a process of a kind of evolution of that role, and also evolution of GBS. I think that's at least what I have seen and experienced. It's a matter of gaining trust in the business from that person having a role of GPO and also GBS. And once that trust has been gained, then business or companies more willing to locate such roles in GBSs. Well, in my history, location of master data or head of master data in GBS was a kind of history purpose, and just it was an evolution of myself having that role. What are the benefits? Definitely being close to biggest part of operations. So that part that it's let's say executing the processes. Definitely that was requiring a lot of additional and work related to building network and stakeholder management within headquarters, but I think once we are speaking about global organizations, anyway, our network as a global process owners are spread usually across the globe, so that was not so big problem at the end of the day.
It's an interesting point which you mentioned, Tarek, that to have a GPO role close to the operations, and indeed I believe that a really good cooperation and collaboration between GPO and operations is also quite crucial for the person to be effective in the role. And Peter, what would be your opinion then, where the GPO should be ideally positioned to be the most effective?
It's a great question. I think time will tell. Some people ended up getting these roles being in the wrong place or in some place at the wrong time in the past. I think that's somewhat changing. ABB has a hybrid approach. So we are the same as Heineken to a large extent, captive, right? So we look after our own shared services for the most part. And I think that also needs to be explored. Are you captive, or are you, let's say, relying on external companies to help you from a BPO perspective? Because that definitely does change a little bit the game here, because you become more of a governing factor from a policy perspective, but also managing that contract and ensuring that they're delivering according to the expectations from a quality perspective. ABB has the following setup. So we have 4 business areas in ABB. Those are basically the business areas that are looking at strategy and portfolio management and ensuring that we have the right direction when it comes to M&A for the businesses. It's electrification, motion, we have robotics, and we have process automation. Within those businesses, we have 18 divisions. So we just recently decentralized, going from a matrix organization, which was already, let's say, a headache. We moved to a decentralized business model. So those 4 business areas set the strategy and direction. The 18 divisions, they are seen as 18 different kind of companies that need to, be profitable and so on and so forth. Now, what's happening in ABB is that we had in the finance function, for the last 15 years, we had the process ownership. We call it the GFPOs, the finance process owners, where you have R2R, P2P, and O2C. And somewhere in between, you've got your master data, of course, right? It doesn't mean that we're not managing that or governing it, but it's a subset of the 3, the foundation level. And it was predominantly built around internal controls back in 2006 and even before that. And what we see is a bit of an evolution here. And again, the conversation we're having is how far does it go and what are the kind of prerequisites for process ownership. But the business, they have their own kind of, let's say and seat at the table when it comes to order to cash and when it comes to procure to pay. Because those 2 processes are very difficult to own from a finance perspective, because it's 1 foot into finance, it's 1 foot into the business, be it on the order management, the sales front, the project management, any kind of risk reviews that are taking place, and particularly in procurement when it comes to supply chain. So you have, finance and you have the business working together, choosing to collaborate, and it's a collaborative setup. So not all reporting ultimately into the CFO, but actually the business process owners reporting into their respective businesses. It adds complexity, it adds flavor, and it certainly brings a lot of conversations to the table. But the way we are moving forward, which I'm extremely passionate about, is that ABB has identified that record to report is core. So that's non-negotiable. Everyone has to comply to that. You can't report the numbers differently. You can't use different systems to report the numbers. You have your US GAAP standard if you're quoted on the stock exchange, and and in the US and Security and Exchange Committee. So there's certain rules you have to comply to. So that the policy in order to war, everyone needs to comply to. I think in procure to pay and order to cash, there are also some non-negotiables on the table, because we can't have 7 ways to Sunday to do the payments, right? We need to do the payments in a common way and in a kind of an agreed way across the entire company. But then when you start getting into the more, let's say, chevrons and process level design, then the business do have something to say when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to different kind of ways of doing business. So that's a common approach that we're looking for. And similar to Averjohn in Heineken, we are now embarking upon the ABB way for finance, which is ultimately to implement the SAP for HANA. And I think you guys have just done that. You're going live now with several countries. So we'll be keeping an eye over your shoulder to see how that went and get some lessons learned and tips and tricks. But this is where the center of the storm, the center of gravity is with the process owners to really put down something that's meaningful and has purpose for the next couple, that's almost watertight for the next 10 years or even longer.
Okay, great. Thanks, Peter, for mentioning, let's say, and underlining that the GPO is in fact working with multiple stakeholders on multiple, we could say, layers. And apart from the fact of having a proper empowerment in the organization by having non-negotiable rules, still there is quite a big area of having the collaboration with the people from the business. And then it quite relates to this, what in our opinion, that the GPO in fact functions and works on 3 levels in the whole organization. On one hand side, from the strategic point of view, on the global level, cooperating with this board level stakeholders and then the GBS leads. Then also with the business on the regional or business division level from the tactical perspective, on what are the priorities and how the things should work on, ultimately also having a good correlation and collaboration with the countries or GBS delivery to ensure that finally this is executed also in a proper way and manner. We could visualize this with this kind of like graphic of the target operating model of a GPO role. And as you can see, this somehow correlates to the previous slide of the levels on which GPO is working and in fact collaborating with different functions and different parts of the organization. So what we mentioned already, big collaboration, wide aspect of the things and responsibilities. So then we could question ourselves, and not only ourselves, but going to another polling, what would be the ideal profile of GPO? And if we would be seeking for the ideal profile of the GPO, let's first think about the poll with the following question. So
sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. So which skills or factors in your opinion is the most important for GPO to be effective in the role? And here you can choose, I think this is right, am I, Robert? You have two votes.
Yes, so you have
so take the top 2.
You can see exactly what from your perspective are then the most important. Let's see how will it look like ultimately, and which are, let's say, the biggest voted ones.
On the basis of our previous year, we should have around 40 this time.
Yeah.
Empowerment is up there at the moment, followed by networking, influencing, and communication skills. So we may unpack those 3 shortly. Okay, a kind of entrepreneurial spirit, quickly recognize the opportunities for improvements. In-depth process knowledge and technology oriented. So that's proving to be less popular, though, you may think that all 5 of these things are important, but it's in terms of which two do you feel are the most important? So, okay, Robert, I think over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we can see indeed, let's say the most popular two ones are empowerment in the organization, networking, influencing, and communication skills. So to some extent, they are pretty much, we could say, connected and related. How to achieve this? How to ensure that those skills are in fact, or those factors are in fact managed in the organization? And this would be the question maybe first to you, Arek. How do you think?
Well, my immediate comment would be that actually this empowerment, it's a consequence of three below competences or factors or skills. Because empowerment is something what you will not gain only by the position, but you have to prove within the organization that you are a strong personality that knows what to do, where to go, and how to get there. So for me, that's those factors or skills that the good GPO should have. It's very much linked to the general leadership skills. So you have to be able to set the right direction and make people following you, convincing them to your vision, to your perspective. And how to get those skills, it's that's in my history is showing that being close to operation or starting from operations, it's giving you a kind of background, and then becoming a global process owner, it's the evolution of seeing different places in the organization and linking the dots to develop a picture of how, in my eyes, ideal process, ideal setup should look like. So I'm not having any recipe that everybody can use and then they will succeed. But that's the hard work and then taking the opportunities and active observation of the reality, I would say.
To make our discussion more active, we have already one question from the audience, which fits to this topic. Question from Julia. She's asking, is there any training to do the job of the GPO properly? Peter, how many trainings you did?
Zero. Look, I'm a bit of a special case. I mean, I basically have done nothing else in the last 24 years. I've grown up in shared services, so the training I have is hands-on. I mean, actually, one of the challenges I had when I became a GPO was I was too hands-on. It was very difficult for me to kind of step up and step out and have that kind of holistic view because I was inside the Excel file, and I'm a holy terror for kind of trying to, do VLOOKUPs and pivot tables. Not anymore. I have to admit, I've kicked the habit, but I tended to kind of spend a lot of time going into the detail, and that's the danger, right? I think it's good to learn the ropes and learn the kind of basics. You need to understand what the process is all about. You need to understand the connection points, and I don't think there's any book out there that can help you. You just need to get hands-on experience. Yeah, you need to build that up, and it's a bit of a foundation layer, like everything else, right? If you're too technical, then you also get sidetracked. I've known a process owner in the past to be so technical that they lose complete sight of what's happening, and they get almost in there to do the coding. So it's almost like this Goldilocks paradox, right? To not be too hot, not be too cold. What's the right temperature here? And there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just but I think do not underestimate the soft skills, being a good and strong communicator, being able to articulate yourself, to bring the people with you when it's not such a good, let's say, outcome for the business because we're being stricter. We want reconciliations to be done quicker, higher quality, high risk accounts. The policy drives the behavior, and that also it's not a good position to be in because it's a bit thankless because you keep shoving policy down the throat of the business or the operations. So being a strong communicator, being able to connect the dots, networking it's all of the above. But quite frankly, there's no textbook out there that will help you. I think, take it one step at a time. I think project management skills, being able to understand and decipher kind of net benefits and the why you're doing something, and always ask yourself the why and what are we trying to achieve here. Asking those kind of basic questions can help set you up nicely. Have the right people around you. Mm-hmm. When I was the GPO, I was not the expert for all the topics, and I never have said I am and I ever will be. So have the right people around you. Have people that have those 5 elements, right? Have people that understand the process, make them your process managers. Have people that understand the technology, that can build those systems and build them to last, right? And have people that actually, can run those projects for you as well. So that's kind of my simple take on it. It evolves, and you can be very passionate about it, or you could be quite boring about it. But everyone's different, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good point which you are raising, that that the process owner do not need to maybe have exactly this in-depth process knowledge as a major thing, but to have a proper people who knows, and rather the process owner should be simply the owner and the one who is building, let's say, the vision and the strategy for the process, how to manage it and move it forward. However, as we can see, from the skill perspective, which at least from the attendees are most recognizable, so the empowerment is a factor in the organization, whether the GPO is have it properly established or not, but then driving the change, so the change management, the communication, influencing, those things, in fact, let's say, are quite and seems to be quite crucial to ensure that this change is happening in the organization. So Evert-Jan, how do you think, whether is this something what you need to be, let's say, born with as for those kind of skills, or you can somehow, let's say, learn them, and if yes, then how you can achieve it? How do you think?
Yeah, so to the question, I don't think there's any training other than on the job. And there's one factor that I'm missing in this list, and that's business understanding. That is critical. You need to understand the business. Preferably, you've worked in an operating company. You've made your hands dirty, because you need to be able to talk to the language of the business. You need to understand the business that your company is in. For us as a CPG company, you need to understand what beer business is about, what the customer wants, what's the customer experience. If you don't have that in your fingers, then it's very difficult to have a meaningful conversation in driving change in processes or in implementing solutions. So that's for me an important one. The other one is curiosity, because you need to be curious about coming back to one of your slides, the change, the improvement, and that's critical, really, that end-to-end piece. My team is process owners within finance. So 4 domains, like Peter had, and we also have the business performance management, and each of them have counterparts. P2P finance and procurement, O2C finance and customer service and sales, R2R in the tax and the treasury domains and the heavy accounting, the business performance management with our business control colleagues. So you really need to be curious about what their business is about and how you connect to that. So that is for me critical. And I think what was mentioned as well, a process owner or a process lead is not on him or herself alone. You need to construct a good team with experts in accounting or in a certain domain, preferably people that come from different functions. So in my team, I've got people that actually came from the customer service environment. So they've worked in customer service, so they know what it's about, and then they moved to finance. I had a finance guy who moved to procurement. So you need to have people rotating.
In general, this is a very important, and interesting point of view, because it seems that you are more looking into having a GPO role grow more from the business, not exactly from the centralized function like shared service center. And even the similar question Kalin Marini is raising, whether it would be so much more complicated to become a GPO with only shared service center experience, maybe not to become the GPO, but to be an effective GPO. So how do you think? Would it be much more difficult, or
not necessarily?
Yeah.
Because if you work in a shared service environment, you are part of the operating company. You're part of delivering the business of the operating company. And if you are a good, colleague is maybe the wrong word, but if you have good conversations with your counterpart in people on the ground, you're part of that team. As long as you really feel part of that team, if you feel the process that is happening there is also your process, and you're not just executing activities in a system or on behalf of, and then it doesn't really matter whether you sit in a shared service center in Krakow or that you sit in a brewery in Zoeterwoude in the Netherlands. So no, that doesn't matter, but it's more the mindset that you think and act like a person sitting in the brewery.
Are you sitting in the brewery now, Evert, Jan?
Unfortunately not. I've been in my home for a year now.
He does have
put bottles in my bag.
You do get the vote for the best branding, I think, there. Yeah.
It's easy, yeah?
To be fair, they have one of the best advertising departments in the world. Yeah.
Closest to the people, yeah, and there we could say there needs nowadays, especially when everyone is sitting at home. So we were
if I can just pick up on what Evert Jan was mentioning, I like the angle when it comes to rotation, but also having that business insights. I mean, I think we tend to be kind of focusing on the shared services, and ABB has just not that long back. I mean, it's a new kind of process to the gang. It's planned to deliver, which is around kind of all of the controlling and CO activities that you have potentially that you can move into a global business services model. So trying out new things. So the old traditional way of doing shared services, by definition, it's old, right? We started with finance, and then we started exploring HR and procurement a little bit, and IT, of course, is a whole different ball game altogether. But I think what's happening is that companies are realizing, and even now more than ever, that there's a lot more can be done, and then you have to think about which process does that belong to. So it almost strengthens the process ownership in companies going forward.
Yeah, it's a good point, Peter, indeed. Thank you very much for this. So we touched a lot of things till now. What exactly GPO is, let's say, supposed to do, from what kind of skills should be having, and that should work on different levels in the organization and touching a lot of functions in the organization. So we can already see that there is a really wide aspect of the responsibilities around the GPO. We could start from this, what you, Peter, mentioned, strategy and vision, where the process should go, and even where the organization should go. Think about the scope definition, whether anything will be centralized or not. Work on the whole process design to have it effective. Work on the standardization and harmonization to ensure efficiencies. And thanks to this, let's say, also measure what is the performance management of the process. All those things also to be, backed up properly with the application landscape, which can be also and should be monitored by the GPO, which is quite also connected with the standardization and harmonization. So on one hand side, standardize the process. On the other hand side, decrease your application landscape to have your processes also, managed in a much easier way and manner. And we could say in smallest amount of the tools and things from which you are taking care of this. Control and compliance. This is what you guys also underlined. In some of the processes, you are having unquestionable decisions and the rules, and then you need to control whether the organizations are compliant with this. So the GPO should establish respective ways of working, or the controls and approach to ensure that this is being simply properly managed. And ultimately, last but not least, driving the whole transformation agenda or automations or robotics, simply going forward with the market trends which we are currently having and taking care of. And this would drive us to following question: what would be the main focus areas for GPO? So where should, let's say, I not start, but simply take into consideration what is happening currently from the market trends perspective, or in the organizations, or what are the directions, what should be the focus areas. Here we also would like to have a polling from the audience.
Okay, so, and this time you've got 3 choices.
Exactly, 3 choices.
Yeah, so take your top 3 key priorities. Process standardization, harmonization, process performance management, process automation and robotics, knowledge management and process documentation, process automation. Oh, they're moving. So I can't read them out anymore.
Let's see what will be the final result. 9 voices, 9 answers.
So we've got 60 people on the call now. So come on. So if you've joined the call, go to slido.com, enter that code 077828, and take your top 3 choices.
Yeah, using the QR code can even take you much faster without providing the number codes. So you can use this new technology.
If you're tech savvy, you can do that. Otherwise, it'll take you longer. Yeah. Look, time's moving on. I suggest we stay there and you start the conversation, Robert.
Thanks, Andrew. So we can see that out of the 34 voices, currently centralization and shaping the target operating model are the priorities. So it would indicate that quite many of you are still in the beginning of their journey of, let's say, setting up or even evolving in the GBS world and the GBS journey. Which is quite interesting to see, but it's quite natural that it's connected with the process standardization and harmonization, which I would understand are, let's say, one of the main things where the organizations are starting in their GBS journey. So you guys are having quite a big experience already, many years, we could say, in the GPO role. From your perspective, what could be the main focus areas nowadays? Peter, if we could start again from you.
I mean, there's so many things going on, but it's about sequencing and not to avoid putting the cart before the horse here. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, I mean, it depends on how evolved you are and how further you are on the journey. I mean, we're 5 years in, but process ownership is not a new thing. I mean, I mentioned at the closer to the beginning that we actually have this in the company close to 10 years. So kind of centralizing and coming up with a target operating model, I think that's a no-brainer. If the more you have of a process in one location, the easier it is to push standard and harmonize. That's just a fact. If you have it, ABB had it in 68 different locations, and we still, of course, have a very strong presence in the countries, but we have managed to centralize in key locations a lot of the process steps and process chevrons, I would refer them to, be it fixed asset management reporting. Think about the accounts payable, third party or internal, and obviously the payment process as well. So, but it doesn't happen on its own, right? We have a bit of a disconnect between GPOs and operations. So I think that's where the collaboration is extremely important. And whatever the GPOs are coming up with, the operations need to digest it and need to make, they actually need to make it happen. So the policy needs to be, something that can be, converted to. You convert towards a standard. And you have to have then some strong project management skills on the ground to make that happen. So I would say, again, it depends on how far you are, but clearly for me, be very careful not to overstep or overshoot the target here. You know, automation and robotics is a big topic everywhere, but we are hearing and seeing and experiencing that it's not as big as we expected it to be a few years ago. So if you don't get the basics right, don't automate the mess. Yeah, don't automate the mess. Go back to basics. Figure out, you know, what level of standardization is acceptable for your organization. Get that buy-in from the business, and just focus on that. Stay focused on that, and then the rest will follow. That's my take on it. And of course, look externally to see if there's what's happening in the market, just to stay up to date, like we're doing today. And John has promised me he's going to send me all of his details as well. But all jokes aside, I think it's about making sure you don't put the cart before the horse. Yeah.
Yeah, especially around automation and robotics. This is something what even when we are having a lot of discussions and webinars around it, you cannot automate properly without having a good standardization of the process in place. And indeed, let's say what we can see is right now also the top selection in this voting, that standardization and harmonization is the key priority. And
Robert, just one thing. I just want to, just from a timekeeping perspective, right? So you've got 10 minutes till we finish, right? Okay.
Yeah, we are good on time. Thank you very much, Andrew, for this time frame keeping. EJ, what would be your opinion about the priorities then?
I think it depends very much on your company's strategic priorities. Because working in isolation is never good. So I don't think as a GPO you can determine your focus areas just by yourself. So it's aligning with the strategic priorities, and then to build on something that Peter said as well is you need to provide certain insights to be able to have that conversation with the business. So I think for me, one of the most critical areas now, and of course we have worked on our target operating model, so that's one that's in the pocket. That is process performance management. It's so much easier now to get access to data, to have the analytics, to have the process mining, and if you have that, then you can jointly determine priorities with the business. For us, there's a huge transformation happening in Europe. With our shared services in Cracow, together with a big technology implementation across Europe. So that pulls a lot of my people's attention. At the same time, we have a big company strategy that we just announced that's going to look in a completely different way on how we're going to be organized around ERPs and cloud platforms around it. So that is, for me, currently the focus areas. But I can imagine that for another company, it's completely different because the priority from the company is different. So for me, and that's why that business understanding, coming back to the skill set that the previous question, is so important, and being able to have good communication and influencing skills.
Yeah, you mentioned different companies might have different priorities. So what would be your priority, Arek, then, as a GPO in Master Data?
Well, I think a lot has been said about sequence, and I would be not fair not highlighting that. I'm right now at the very beginning of the journey in my company, so I'm trying to start right from the right start. I'm highlighting right sequence because I have heard many stories of not successful GPOs or not successful automations, and deep diving those stories, each and every time I was finding that the sequence was not right. So my message to everybody would be that we should not think about GPO as a 1 year exercise. It's a couple of years journey that should be planned, and we should not expect results overnight. So all the things that we are having here are important, but the most important is the right sequence.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, guys, for those insights. So as already mentioned by Andrew, getting close to the last, we could say, questions and points of the discussion, what still we would like to go through quickly and to have those takeaways for the whole audience, we could cover in 2 questions. The first one is, what is the recipe to bring the real value from the process ownership? The second one would be also where the GPO role is simply heading to. So there, let's have a quick catch up on those points of views and ideas. From my perspective, as for the real value, I fully align with this what was said a bit earlier, that when shared services were starting, first we were looking just only on the ownership of accounts payable or simply transactional general ledger. Right now, bringing the real value rather comes from looking really end-to-end process ownership. So the whole source to pay under one hands and under one umbrella. And only thanks to this, it will be possible to really have a good management of the process. And what kind of other takeaways you guys would present? Arek, if you could start with you.
Well, it's a kind of summary, so I would like to try to avoid saying once more what has been already said. But I think my main message would be that it would be extremely difficult to move forward and run business nowadays without strong personal or strong mandate to navigate with particular processes. And potential in GPO role, it's huge. It's definitely much more than even we have discussed right now. There is more potential, more possibilities, more areas that we have not discovered yet. It's a matter of starting, having the courage of starting, and being aware of the risk of not having and not managing processes. That would be my summary.
Thanks, Arek. EJ, how about you?
Yeah, it's a bit repeating what we said earlier. I think for us, if you want to really bring value, you need to provide insights, you need to show value to the company, you need to find common ground in creating end-to-end process strategies, combining and influencing functional strategies. We're still organized in functions, so you need to connect with the other functions and say, okay, you have a certain ambition in procurement. You know, this is the impact of procurement on finance. This is our finance strategy. Where's the common ground and how can we join up in delivering value for the company? That is what you need to do. You need to let others understand the value of end-to-end, the importance of end-to-end, and the consequences of decisions upstream for downstream, and also the subsequent consequences for either the customer or the bottom line. That is ultimately the where we earn the money, and that's value for the company. So not for the process owner, it's value for the company, and how can you enable that? And that also gives you the seat at the table to do the influencing.
Thank you, Jay. Peter, how about you?
I think there's been so much said. You know, you mentioned something about recipe. I love the word recipe because that you can play around with that. You know, so where's the GPO heading? Hopefully in a good place, right? The spider in the web, someone who has the kind of tentacles that is, you know, overarching. If you're building a house, you call the architect to help you, you know, design the house, right? You need an architect who's qualified. I see the process owner as an architect. They have to design and come up with something that's sustainable. You don't want the building to fall down. And then, you know, the ones who build the building are the operations, and they need to deliver the quality, on time delivery, and all this sort of thing. I think, you know, if we were to bake a cake of process ownership, 500 grams ingredients, 100 grams of being a hero. So improve the process, come with a standard, come with an automated kind of roadmap. 100 grams of being the bad cop. You're not always going to make, you know, decisions that are popular, but, you know, stick to your guns, policy adherence, you know, procedures, internal controls. 100 grams of listening. Just sit back and listen. Don't make all the decisions on your own. You know, be communicative, but also collaborative, but listen. And last but not least, 200 grams of just common sense. Yeah, that would be the 500-gram process cake if I was to bake it right now.
Thanks, guys. I think that this is really nice summary of everything what you have said till now and the whole session. So as we are really going towards the end of the timing, I would like to thank everyone for the joining. Still have 2 minutes. Are there still any questions from the audience to be which we could discuss and which we could touch upon? Are there any more questions on the chat box?
We do not see the questions. I would like to add something to what Peter mentioned. Yeah, I like very much the architecture, the thing to the GPS architecture, but I will add also, having a small experience with the building the house, that a part of the architecture, the GPO should be also we call it plant construction manager, meaning someone who is not building or not, but also keeping the eye if the people who is on the construction plant building the house in line with the architecture idea.
Well, if we're going to go with the house metaphor, the most important are the people that live in the house.
Yeah, exactly. So this is coming back also to what Peter said. Collaboration might be really a good point and thing, let's say, to start and to take care of. Some GPO roles might be properly empowered in the organization, but then working just only on pushing the down might not be so good. And we could say long-lasting and building proper networking and collaboration with the whole organization might be a key thing as well. Okay, good. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining the session. For any kind of additional questions or discussions, we would like to invite you to our group on LinkedIn, where we are building, let's say, the network of the GPOs, where we want to discuss and continue all the topics related to the role, the challenges, how the role will be evolving in the future, and simply to be able to discuss how to move forward.
Or better still, join Aspire.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Brilliant.
you very much, everyone. We wish you a nice day.
Bye-bye. Dzień dobry. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.